Well, this is going to be a special week on Powered 4 because all the shows will be doing WrestleMania specials. And today, Big Fight Weekly are doing a WrestleMania special about crossovers into wrestling, boxing, MMA, and everything in between. And one of my first guests today is my co-host from Big Fight Weekly. You can see every Tuesday at 6 o'clock live, Mr. Chris Hume.
All right, back again.
How are you? Back again for this lovely special. Looking forward to this. And our first guest is coming all the way from Wisconsin. It is the ops manager for Wrestling Travel in the US and the host of the Wrestling Travel Lockdown Sessions, Mr. Justin Clapper, JC.
Wow, that's the best introduction I ever got. Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
I double barreled it for you, JC. I had to for a man of your stature.
I appreciate it. Glad to be here.
Absolutely. And our final guest is one of the two head honchos at Powered 4 TV and the host of Powered 4 SP3, which you can catch every week, Mr. John Scott.
Hello, guys.
Hello,
how are we all?
All good, all good. This is great. Normally me and Chris are a tandem, but yeah, what better way to do this as we are crossing over into wrestling, boxing and MMA. And I think the best place to start, there you go, he's pointing. I think we have to start with the most dangerous man, Ken Shamrock, when he came in 1997 to WWF, WWE. Vince McMahon had the foresight to intertwine MMA into wrestling. What are your thoughts, gentlemen? Chris, what did you think when you first saw Ken Shamrock in 97?
Was it WrestleMania 13 with Bret Hart and Austin?
It was. He was special guest ref.
He was huge back then. I can't remember him being that big in the UFC, to be honest with you. But yeah, he was a scary dude in MMA itself. So yeah, it was a nice crossover, and he did MMA proud when he did crossover properly.
He was massive, man. It was. I just thought the plan was he was going to be a referee. What did you think, JC, when you first saw Shamrock crossing over? What were your thoughts?
Awesome, because Shamrock was a name. We used to get all the UFC pay-per-views back in college. That's what we did. We'd all put our money together, watch the pay-per-views, and now you're watching. That guy had everything. He was jacked up. He's one of those proverbial, the ladies want to be with him and all the guys want to be him type of guys, and stepping in into the field in WWE was huge. We were fired up for it, jacked up, for another word.
How about you, Mr. Scott? What were your thoughts when you first saw Shamrock come in?
I thought he looked a little bit uncomfortable when I first saw him at WrestleMania 13 and like the whole thing going into it. But I mean, talk about something just clicking. Like, he got it really, really quick. He got it so fast. He had that character down in like a matter of a couple of months, and he was getting over more than probably what they ever thought, because he just had this kind of like unleash kind of like craziness about him, about that look. He'd snap in some of his matches, and it started to click even at a time where Steve Austin was like just really getting to those heights. Shamrock wasn't that far behind him in 97 in those early months. So yeah, he made a very, very quick transition. One of the best, I'd say, from the MMA.
We weren't aware of it over here. Well, I wasn't. I didn't know what UFC was at that point. So, JC, you knew what the guy could do, in an MMA professional capacity. But this was like the first time we saw him, so we didn't know his background and stuff like that. But he obviously got more and more into it, and it was like, wow, this is incredible. But even like, it got to December 1997, and he was in the main event against Shawn Michaels for the title at the Generation X, the pay-per-view. So it's he had a great start. I think he could have been world champion in WWE. I know he got the IC title. What your thoughts, gents, on that? Do you think he could have been world champion in WWE?
I'll go. If they would have played up, depending on how they were playing up the angles, the way they are now with the quote unquote the real athletes and stuff, like him being able to tear it up in the ring, but now you're bringing him over to pro wrestling here. If they would have went that way, that would have been very tough for them to not keep creating their own stars and then having these UFCs, boxers, and all these stuff. So I think they have to make it where that transition into from MMA into pro wrestling is a tough one. He got it, but then it's tough to try to keep everybody else going. It's just like the transition from being a college football player to NFL. You can be all world in college, and now as you come up to the NFL, the pond's a little bit tighter, full of bigger athletes, and that's how they had to make the transition. So I think he could have, and I think, you know what, I'll throw it out there, at 58 years old and still killing it in Impact, he might have a title on him as well. I don't know if they give the Impact the world title status. I certainly still do, but you never know. Never say never.
He's looked fantastic, JC. Just to reiterate what you're saying about Impact, what I don't watch Impact week in, week out. I'll tell you that now. I'll be honest about it. But what I have seen, for his age, he still looks fantastic.
I'll give you a little behind the scenes, and I won't name my source, but it's a credible source. Bound for Glory 2019, October in Chicago. Ken Shamrock versus Moose. Go back and watch it. Shamrock did not step into the ring until he stepped into the ring with Moose. He didn't go. He does his regular conditioning and everything, but that was his first time stepping back into a professional wrestling ring for God knows how long. I'll do it the night of. And I was there. It was impressive. I don't know how you guys saw it on videotape, but the guy can bring it.
I just want to take it back. Actually, 1998 now. And we had the Lions Den match. And I know off camera, John, a couple of days ago, we were talking about the Lions Den match. They did cater to him, and they did all the big build-up with Owen Hart in the dungeon as well. What were your thoughts back in 98 at SummerSlam when they did that MSG, that match?
I loved that match. I thought it was really good. I actually watched that very recently. And considering we've been watching so much wrestling without crowds, it goes to show how good they were, because like when everybody thinks about the dungeon, it wasn't a massive area. It was not a massive space to go and put a load of cameras in and try and shoot something down there. But like for what they did, those two guys, they made something out of pretty much nothing. I mean, it could have been a real stinker, but they actually really pulled it off. And WWF at the time, they let them be quite legit. They didn't kind of throw too many gimmicks in there, or weapons and all this kind of stuff that we probably see today. So I quite enjoyed all that.
How about you, Chris? Because we watched that live in '98 at your mum and dad's house. We were only young. Mind. We were 12 at the time, but I remember staying up. I don't know how we stayed awake, mate. I tell you, but I remember us enjoying the Lions Den match. I do remember.
You had to wrestle the remote off my mum first before we could even get the women thing on the telly, if you remember rightly. Right.
You did have it all hardwired in all the bedrooms over the sky. That was ahead of the time. But yeah,
then you'd turn it over halfway through and you'd be like, "Ma'am."
your thoughts on the Lions Den match at the time? Because I remember we were quite fond of that bout back in the day when we were kids.
I personally haven't watched it back. I couldn't really comment too much. Obviously, John's probably said more than probably I'd say, because I can't really remember much of it back, to be honest with you, because it's a bit I've been watched so much since. I mean, I can only sort of say with Ken Shamrock is, in his latest bouts in Bellator, and he did look quite good against Tito, and then Royce Gracie, okay, minus getting popped here and there for a few substances, but he still brought it, and he still looked very good for a guy in a sport that's for the young ones and not for the older.
You seamlessly got that over to MMA there. Well done, well played.
Otherwise, I'd be sitting here going,
That was no, that's good. That's what we want. It's all about the crossover between how the boxing and the MMA was into the wrestling. So yeah, I think leading into that, it was Dan Severn's appearance in the WWF, WWE, 1998. Jim Cornette involved. Also, he needed that mouthpiece. John, that did say about this. And he had quite a lot of belts at the time. What do we remember about Dan Severn, JC? What are your thoughts on his run coming over?
A lot of people don't realize, if you look it up, that belt hanging over his shoulder right now is the NWA championship belt, and I do believe Dan Severn held it for something like 7 years. Now NWA was kind of that territory that was like lost in the woods, but they were keeping that torch alive. And Dan Severn was somebody who was doing it on a high level, defending the UFC title and the NWA title, like all at the same time, before even Shamrock and the WWE had this idea with MMA guys. So my hat is off to Dan Severn, because I'm not going to go out on a limb and say he was the first, because there's going to be somebody that knows something else obscure. But to me, that was the first guy I remember that was like, this is awesome for our sport, professional wrestling, because this is a guy who's holding a quote unquote a belt in legitimate promotion such as UFC, and he's also wrestling professionally, which for me, I was always protect the business. It means something different to me now, but protecting the business from what we do to not letting the average fan know about it. Well, now the internet and everything else has gotten over, but he was my best excuse for protecting the business. Like, hey, this guy's NWA world champion. This guy's, you can see him on your UFC. So you tell me he's not legit. And Dan Severn, the Beast, 100% legit.
I didn't realize he had a 700-day run with it. I knew he was the NWA champion.
7 years.
700 days. Sorry. Carry on, JC.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, Stu, is that you got to remember that title was probably not defended every 30 days. No, because the NWA really was searching for it. Was NWA Midwest, NWA East Coast, and they were still keeping the name afloat. So he had it for 7. A lot of those guys that hold it for 7 years, besides the great Bruno Sammartino, probably were not defending it that often, but he was defending it, and a full-time, obviously, as a champion in the UFC. So for guys like me, and I know it makes me the old guy out of the bunch, but you guys would have been damn proud too, to be like, okay, anybody that wants to argue pro wrestling isn't what it is, hey, our champ is your UFC champ. So there you go.
Mr. Scott, your thoughts on Dan Severn crossing over?
Yeah, and I completely agree with JC on a lot of the background and having the legitimacy and wrestling put in a high esteem for a change. But the thing is with poor old Dan Severn, mate, when he come in, he was like 1 year too late, because they brought him in like the mist of the Attitude Era, and he got lost. I mean, there was a story, I think, that Shamrock said in one of his shoots where Severn was out there in that top that you saw in that picture you just showed, and he took it off, and I think Vince yelled through from Gorilla, tell him to put the top back on quick, and don't let him speak. So I think he was put into the deep end, if I'm honest, because the Attitude Era was a crazy time, full of over-the-top characters, very edgy, and I think Severn would have gone in like not knowing the direction. I think if he'd have come in at the same time Shamrock did at WrestleMania 13, he'd have got over a lot more. But I think he was put in a very difficult position in the WWF, sort of the mist of the whole Attitude Era for me.
Think perfectly now, Chris, to get into MMA with Dan Severn with you and what you think about his career. I mean, it was over 100 wins he's had in MMA. Crazy, and not that many losses considering how many fights he's actually had. I was surprised he'd had that many fights professionally in MMA.
But he did fight the best, though. He didn't just fight bums. He did fight, the Ken Shamrocks, majority of the Gracies. People allude to him being a UFC staple, but if I'm honest, he did his best work in Pride, and he was, that's where you saw the Beast and used his wrestling and beat people to a pulp. Week in, week out when he was there. Absolutely staple Hall of Fame for UFC. MMA is a whole, and he wasn't just called the Beast for nothing. And you can still watch his fights on Fight Pass on UFC, and honest to God, he was a scary, scary man for the time of MMA it was about.
Outside of it, though, he's kind of like a gentleman.
No, he's kind.
A kind soul. What do you reckon, JC? He's a fighter and all that, but he's a very calm. Get him out of the confines of the cage, the wrestling ring. He's just what a chilled out man, and he seems a sweetheart to me. Like what I've seen of him outside of wrestling and MMA.
Yeah, the stories I've heard with guys sharing a locker room with him, that has been, he's just been a very chilled out. And I was looking down on my phone, that title reign in the NWA. Sorry, I was a little short on the 7 years, but February 24th, 1995. Until March 14th, 1999. So
still
a massive rank, not the 7 years. I don't know why I had 7 in the back of my head.
It's on a par with Backlund.
Yeah. But, you talk about you bringing him in, and he was a little bit out of shape then whenever they brought him in. But how much money did they leave lying on the table by not doing the Beast versus Shamrock? That comes up even today as people discuss it. And I certainly wish they would have done it. Could
they have done that as a shoot, say, rather than have it? They wouldn't have done that as a wrestling match, would they? Vince could have booked that there and then. It could have been the real before the Brawl for All, which was an absolute disaster, which I'm going to get onto in due course. That could have been. They could have had it right there, and they
could have done it and not lost. They could have saved a lot of. I mean, the Brawl for All is its own thing, but before that, they could have had 2 legit MMA competitors thrown it in, and they could have saved face on whatever would have happened there. They would not have had egg on their face. So yeah, I agree.
What was their relationship at that point with UFC? Because obviously they fought in the UFC, Dan Severn and Ken Shamrock. Could they have not sort of used any footage or spoke to Dana at the time or the Fertitas and used that maybe going into WWE to push the fight if they were to fight in the WWE?
Yeah, and I'm not sure the relationship. Maybe one of you guys know, but certainly
they were. I believe that WWE, when he first came in, they actually promoted a UFC show in regards to having signed Ken Shamrock as part of the deal. They were going to promote UFC because at the time, WWF just did not see the Ultimate Fighting Championship as any type of competition. They were just doing those pay-per-views and that was it. It was a quick in and out. So they were using footage at the time. They did have Shamrock stuff, but it's odd, isn't it? Because if you think only in 2 or 3 years, UFC started to get so mainstream that Shamrock thought, you know what, I can actually make some good money doing something I really passionately like. Maybe he had that competitiveness still in him, that he went back to do the whole stuff with Tito Ortiz and all the rest of it.
And that was an absolutely brilliant ultimate fight between him and Tito Ortiz. You've got to watch that because it's prime Tito and Shamrock.
Heart of a lion.
I love it when the coaches are actually genuinely. It's not just for the cameras. They hate that. I think Shamrock got more worked up than Tito Ortiz though.
He was an awful coach in that though, mate. Awful coach in that Shamrock. He had a bodybuilder showing people how to wrestle. You know what I mean?
It's like the passing of the torch, wasn't it? Really,
yeah. They hated each other.
Yeah,
but it was great. Yeah, the birth of Michael Bisping in that series as well.
Yeah, he came to the forefront then, didn't he? I think JC.
No, I was just gonna, before we get too far off on that, the one thing that you guys have to remember over there in the UK is that our politicians got very involved.
Yeah,
in MMA and UFC, there was talks of them getting on a ship and going out into international waters to actually have to hold UFC competitions. So I don't know how much my brain's a little foggy, but I gotta say the late 90s there, that was probably right about that same time, and maybe that plays into what they were or weren't doing with UFC.
It was Senator John McCain, wasn't it? When they were going through all the different athletic commissions to try and pass it, and they weren't budging at that time, were they? But yeah, it was John McCain was involved with that over in the States when that was all going on, because I've watched some documentaries and stuff. But yeah, just have it on. I mean, they've had Fight Island now, but they might have had to have done Fight Island back then, like 20, 25 years prior.
Thank God for Big John McCarthy setting the rules.
Yeah. Legend of the game. I think it's perfectly poised now to get into the aforementioned Brawl for All tournament, which we got in 98, just after 7 came in. What an absolute disaster. It's been covered on the dark side of the ring. Russo seemed to be made the fall guy for that, but at the end of the day, Vince McMahon would have signed off on it. So I think Russo was made the scapegoat to a certain extent when you watch it, but it was the injuries of the guys as well, wasn't it? It absolutely caused chaos. There was a lot of decision victories in it. They wanted people knocked out or submitted. People were getting injured. What are your thoughts, gentlemen, on the tournament back in 98? I know it was a long time ago.
How didn't Dan Severn win that? a legit fighter there, other than obviously having Butter being in the final wouldn't be good for anybody who can't box. How did he not win that? Considering he was the legit fighter out of everybody there.
What about JR's pick, Dr. Death Steve Williams? That just that's curtailed all his momentum as a wrestler off the back of this, didn't it?
You know what I think Brawl for All taught us, and WWE especially, is that stuff you can't control doesn't end up making you the most money. So I think that, you know, if WWE after this, they were like, we're never doing anything with regards to a shoot, because, you know, you just never know who's going to come out and win. And I'm pretty sure they never had an intention of Bart Gunn getting all the way to the finals for that WrestleMania 15 match with Butterbean.
What a right hand, though. What a right hand from Bart Gunn.
Oh,
Did not see that. Don't see that coming.
What were your thoughts on it, JC? You're a bit quiet there.
I'm just looking at the lineup there, and I don't want to say anything controversial, but when you say, why didn't Dan Severn win this? And you're talking about bringing him in too late and having him cover up his body. He might not have been on the gas that everybody else was on at that time. And I'm not just talking the juice. I mean, a lot of these guys, it's very well noted that whatever type of substance you can take to feel no pain was probably being taken at the time. And it was terrible for Dr. Death because here he is, legitimate Hall of Famer in college football and collegiate wrestling. And obviously he's passing on from cancer, you know, not very long after that. So you never know. And then for a lot of these guys, if they talk to these guys, what's the inside story? We're saying that this was going to be a legit battle and stuff like that, but you don't know these guys talking in the back of the locker room going, you know, the heck with this, man. I've been around for X amount of years and I don't really feel like getting tagged in the face for real or whatever. So I don't know how much everybody's hearts were in it, if I can call, and I don't have any inside information, but to me, some of it has to be, was it really a legitimate bracket where everybody was like balls out going to go for it? Or was it kind of you've been at football practices and other things where somebody's going to bring it. Coach says, go half speed, and somebody's going to Super Bowl it on the first day and try to tag you. So you never know. Like a lot of these guys could have still been, and I have to go back and watch the footage, but they could have been still going, all right, let's make it a little bit of a show because that's what we're known to do. Let's drag it out. Let's give the audience, the crowd paying, something to look at, and then maybe somebody takes it a little serious and, all right, I'm going to take you down. I still don't know if the guys might have had it all sorted.
What was Brackus doing in there? He cut a promo in Deutsch, in German, months before. I remember Chris. We had two mates that moved back over from Germany, English father, German mother, and obviously they could speak both lingos. And he cut this promo in German, didn't he? About what he was going to do to the Nation of Domination. They didn't do anything with it off the back of the promo like they do. They drop stuff, then they just throw him in the Brawl for All when he's not like known, or he's not known to the fans as such. I didn't get that. That's the odd one in that bracket for me. What's Brackus doing in there?
Disappeared then, didn't he?
No idea.
Didn't he disappear then?
Yeah,
didn't see him after that.
Off the back of that, yeah. But it's like you got guys in there like the Godfather. You know, he's legit tough guy in terms of, you know, bar brawling and stuff like that. They're all hard guys. They've all got, they can all bring it. But like you say, JC, was somebody taking a dive, and were they, you know, chatting backstage about like, I don't fancy this? You don't know. We don't know, do we?
Yeah, that's the thing. We don't know. Like it's all set up to be legit, but at the end of the day, the guys in the ring are the ones going, hey, dude.
What do you think? Obviously, it's come to light in the last year or so when the Dark Side of the Ring episode dropped. Do you think it was right, from what we've heard from the wrestlers and the guys, Cornette, people like that? Was Russo the problem with this? Because I still maintain it's got to get signed off by Vince McMahon, the head honcho. So I think he was made the fall guy personally, Russo. Like he is with a lot of stuff. I know he was a bit wacky with his booking. What do we think in terms of that, gentlemen, with Russo?
I don't personally put it all on Russo. Again, it landed at WrestleMania 15, like the biggest event. So, like, clearly there was something there that they wanted to see. And so I think it's, it's the head guy himself. If he didn't want it, they could have had that end anywhere. They could have just done it on a Raw, a Heat, or whatever. But they still wanted to showcase it at the biggest show. And that is why it gets, publicized as much as it does, because Butterbean came in and just smashed him within like a couple of seconds. And just, I mean, that, if anything, just exposed so much, because, again, you've got all this great wrestling on your biggest night, and then you've got this boxer just going in there with like 2 shots, and then kids kind of scratching their head like, well, how come that just finished so fast with gloves on? And yet the other guys are, throwing fists at one another. So it was a disaster from start to finish. Made no real sense. But I don't wholeheartedly blame Russo for that. I think that the buck stops with Vince McMahon.
Chris, we stayed up again for this one. But the thing I've got to say as well, the main tournament was done in the August, right? And then this match, obviously, they wanted to showcase it at the biggest level. Why? There was so many months. There was just so many months in between with nothing going on. And then they led up to it. And Bart Gunn, that was him finished then, wasn't it? Because who would have known what could have happened to him going forward if he had have beaten Butterbean? I know he's in there with a professional boxer. What did you think, Chris? Sorry, I'm whittering on here.
Madness. Didn't make any sense, did it? Do you think Bart Gunn was actually the one they wanted to win as well?
No, they didn't. They didn't. It was like your Dr. Death Steve Williams, probably Dan Severn. They had their guys. JR's come out and said it over the years who they wanted to win, and it was just detrimental to so many guys. It just absolutely, made them nosedive in terms of booking for WWF, I found. But carry on.
Dan Severn being a mixed martial artist against a pro boxer, I know Butterbean dipped into MMA. He still would have been clouted out there in 2 seconds as well. It was a weird thing. I just remember all that going on and not making heads or tails of what the hell's going on. Crazy time.
I think we'll move on to the next topic now, and it's a bit more current, but we're going to cover both wrestling and MMA with this man in equal measure. I hope we'll get a good, side from everybody about Brock Lesnar's career. Is he the best ever? I'm looking at Chris in terms of MMA. I'll go to you first. Your thoughts on Brock Lesnar? He was a world champion, Chris.
He was handed the title, though, wasn't he? Because he lost to Frank Mir in his first fight, and then he fought Heath Herring, who was on his way out at that point. And then he fought Randy Couture, who at that point hadn't fought in a year, because he was chasing the Fedor fight, and it was a legit heavyweight. It wasn't a heavyweight champion. No, I'm sorry, not one bit. Obviously, I'll give his hats off for getting in there, and he was a very good wrestler. But what you saw with Brock Lesnar is he beat people who weren't good enough at the time, and when he fought the best people, your Cain Velasquez.
We've spoken about this in a previous episode of Big Fight Weekly, and I did bring the dichotomy here. Lesnar, when he lost to Alistair Overeem, he had diverticulitis prior. I know we haven't spoken at length about it. Don't forget, he was very poorly, and his team turned around and said that you shouldn't be doing this fight, and he still got in there. He nearly died. The man nearly passed away. Does a fully fit Brock Lesnar beat Overeem?
No, because
never.
Not just because of Brock Lesnar, because Brock Lesnar was, like I said, a very good wrestler. But Brock Lesnar, if you ever watch his fights back in UFC, minus Frank Mir, because Frank Mir wasn't really a striker, but he didn't like getting hit, did he, at all? And at that point, Overeem was juiced up to his gills. They called him Uberine for a reason. And he said if you watch Overeem in Pride, he's a stick. You see it Overeem in Strikeforce, and he's eating 2 guys and using their muscle mass. No, he wouldn't have beat him purely because Overeem was on the juice. And he was eating his horse meat, as he always used to say.
I want to get your thoughts on him as a wrestler, as a pro wrestler now. So when he came in 2002, he was at OVW. Obviously, he was highly touted. Heyman was hot on him. What did you think when you first saw him when he came out? It was like Spike Dudley was in the ring. There were some other guys as well. My headphones were on.
That was a dirty squash for Spike Dudley. That really wasn't it. This came in, yeah. He was like, who the hell's this guy? Vince always loved his big guys, didn't he? And Brock Lesnar was one big, massive guy. It was, I don't know. I thought he was a bit green for quite a while. I think his best stuff is when he's been with Paul Heyman, really.
He was with Paul Heyman though, wasn't he? Straight away. Yeah. He came out with him. He's like directing traffic, wasn't he, and going crazy outside. But I just think with Lesnar, what are your thoughts, JC, in terms of pro wrestling? And I'm going to ask you in an MMA capacity what you thought of him.
Well, I'll start I'll start with your first question. Is he the best ever? You guys know way more about MMA and UFC than I do. I do believe there is a shelf life on athletes, boxing and MMA. But is Brock Lesnar the best ever? Maybe he's not knocking the guys out you think he should, but I tell you what, he put the butts in the buckets, man. He sold pay-per-views. He sold merch. So it depends on your measuring stick. And then you bring him over to the world of pro wrestling, and he kicked ass. He's got the look. He's got that legitimacy that we're talking about with Shamrock and Severn. And the only thing that happened to him was the internet wrestling community going, I'm sick of them putting the stuff on Brock Lesnar, the title here. He's always in the picture, but where else would he have been? The dude is larger than life. He's got the mouthpiece of Paul Heyman, which you guys mentioned, which is perfect because he doesn't exactly dig getting up on the mic. He wants to go in there and he wants to be Brock Lesnar on the screen, I believe, is just an extension of Brock Lesnar at home. He doesn't care for the crowds and the people. Give me the paycheck. Let me knock somebody out. Let me go in there and do that. And that's what he did. And when he did, remember when he had the Money in the Bank and he was like, he had a boombox and you got to see a little bit of Brock having fun, how cool that was to see. I still think he can come back. I still think there's a lot of room for him to come back. So was he the best ever in UFC? Depends on your measuring stick. I guarantee a lot of pay-per-view buys came on the shoulders of that man.
Yeah, no, most definitely did. And it took to Conor McGregor then to change all that. But UFC 100 was legit the best pay-per-view they sold with Brock Lesnar as the main attraction for a very long time.
And it wasn't the best. Remember us watching UFC 100? You had GSP on that card, and they bigged it up because it was 100. But it wasn't the best card, was it, Chris? We watched that live.
Well, no, because Dan Henderson knocked out Bisping that card, didn't he? And everyone in the front room, everyone in the front room just went. He came back for UFC 200 as well, and again, those pesky cocktails, wasn't it, that got him out again? But he did a good job against Mark Hunt. You know what I mean? Who wants to go in there with Mark Hunt and trade with him? He did really well. I'm not knocking him for getting in the octagon. I'm not knocking him for his skill set. I just don't think he was that good, because when he met the likes of Cain Velasquez, who at that point was a monster, he saw the difference in the skill set and the rate of the elite and standard fighter.
Mr. Scott, I thought JC was going to say something then. JC?
I feel like every time I feel like I'm overstepping my bounds, but I'll actually ask John Scott. We've got on my screen, Chris and Stu are above us and we're below. For guys like Chris and Stu who analyze and take apart every little thing that the fighters do, I can't get into it on that level because, and I don't know about you, that's where I'm kind of asking as a layman. It was nicer for me when I didn't have the internet and I could just watch two guys kick the hell out of each other, because as soon as I started going, all right, that's my guy, he's going to go in. I could never call it like I could try to call like a soccer match or a football game. Like, I think they have more talent. They're going to win. As soon as I thought I knew, my guy was getting knocked out and stuff. And I don't know how that is for you. And I prefer it that way, where I can't really jump on. I love to jump on Conor McGregor, and because I love his talk and I think he could be a crossover. But then as soon as I get on him, he gets the hell knocked out of him. So John, I'm asking you. I'm not sure where you're at with how highly do you follow these guys?
I follow it, but you know, a lot of it is because of Lesnar. One thing I want to say, like Brock Lesnar, NCAA, like look at that record; it was outstanding. He had a tremendous background as a wrestler, a legit, you know, like some crazy record. His first year in WWE, I think, is probably one of the best. I know that Kurt Angle gets that recognition a lot, but Brock Lesnar, I mean, like he was WWE champion by SummerSlam. He'd won the King of the Ring. I think he took out Hulk Hogan. He got involved in the Vince McMahon, Ric Flair storyline, had a Hell in a Cell with Undertaker, won the Royal Rumble, and then in his first WrestleMania, he's headlining up against Kurt Angle. So it's like, that's a hell of a rookie year. And had Brock Lesnar not come back again, I still think that's Hall of Fame bound. I still think he would have had enough to get in that, because those 2 years that he had were enough as it was. When he went to do MMA, obviously before that, let's not forget he did try for the Vikings, American. That's where he went first time, and he actually says that's the hardest thing he ever did, because you just couldn't tell where the guys were coming at you to tackle. So he says that's the hardest sport he's done. But then in MMA, you know, I get what you guys are saying. Maybe he wasn't the best of the best, but like JC said, like money-wise, he was box office. I also think he cut his best promos in MMA, not WWE. I thought he had some right stealers. That Frank Mir one, you know,
Frank Mir too. Yeah.
Oh, mate, yeah, he let loose. I think if WWE would let him go like that, you'd see a different side to Brock, but he was very comfortable in the octagon. He's not comfortable in the WWE ring. And that fight he had with Shane Carwin, I thought, when I saw that, I thought, man, he took an absolute beating and still had the heart to come out, because Shane Carwin just gassed himself out with so many punches. And Carwin at the time, I remember everyone saying to me, Brock's going to get destroyed. This is the guy they're bringing in from somewhere else. Like, this is the end of him. And I thought after he'd come through that, I thought Brock was actually going to have a really strong, career in UFC. But obviously, as Stu said earlier, he got that condition and that was it. But I think Brock Lesnar, pound for pound in WWE, I think we'll look back at Brock Lesnar and say he is absolutely one of the best, one of the biggest draws. And the reason is he lives in a compound. He doesn't do interviews. He doesn't, he protects the business, as JC always says, very, very well. And he's always over. He's always over with the crowd, you know.
I just think, I think in terms of wrestling, let's not forget he went to Japan. He went to New Japan as well. He got the world title there. Kurt Angle did the same. At the end of the day, you know, I know they made their names predominantly in WWE. They did go to other places, and I think he's fantastic. I know he splits opinion. People are moaning it's just suplex. But at the end of the day, he's getting a reaction from the crowd, good, bad, or indifferent. So the man's doing his job at the end of the day. I like Lesnar. You know, it's the size of the man. There's nobody like him. I know they've got that young kid, Parker Bordeaux, and they're saying he's like mini Brock Lesnar, but I don't know, big shoes to fill. But in terms of wrestling as well, John, just going back to the time frame and how quick they pushed him, the main event with Angle at WrestleMania 19, what a match. Then he's gone off the top rope and nearly broke his neck. You know, he was
you could equally push it back that though in his last fight, last match with Goldberg wasn't great either, was it?
No, Austin
stole. He had to save that.
Austin stole the show there, didn't he?
It was snooze fester.
But that was a tough match on both those guys. The dirt sheets knew they were both taken out, you know, so they had the crowd. They had to work against that crowd.
That New York audience was not going to let them get away with that.
If it had been in Chicago or Philadelphia, somewhere like that, it would have been the same reaction, wouldn't it, JC?
Yeah, I think so. And real quick, I want to just stick this in real quick here, so you guys can say, "Hey, I'm glad JC pointed me in this direction." But another guy coming out of Minneapolis, Minnesota, that you might have recently heard of, an NCAA wrestler, aptly named, great first name, Gable Stevenson. So keep your eye on him.
Hey, we've had the scoop there. We've had the scoop from JC.
Tweeted he's going to be the. Well, he did it. He said, I'm going to be the biggest thing WWE's ever seen. So get on his Twitter, watch this guy do backflips on the NCAA mats and stuff, and look at his build and tell me that they can't do something with this kid. So that's all respect for Parker Boudreaux.
Yeah.
But my money's on this guy, Gable Stevenson.
I think we've covered plenty there on Mr. Lesnar. Let's go to break, to the ad for Powered 4 TV, and we'll see you at the other end.
Of jockeying for position. Neither man wants to give an inch, but something's got to give at some point.
Up and over goes Pac.
The fantastic TNT Extreme Wrestling there out of Liverpool. I know Jay Apter and the team are looking forward to getting shows back up and running exclusively to Powered 4 On Demand with so many other promotions from the UK and the US. Right, lads, back into it now. CM Punk, was he put in too deep because of his wrestling career? I will throw it to Mr. John Scott firstly. Your thoughts on Mr. CM Punk? In wrestling, in MMA, however you want to take it.
This is so hard for me because I was such a big CM Punk fan, still am in wrestling, and a lot of my friends, colleagues that were not wrestling fans but they were like MMA fans were like, "Who is this guy? Is he like Brock Lesnar? You know, has he got like some background and how good's he going to be?" Like they were looking at his age first and foremost, thinking like, "Why is he getting into this now?" And yeah, it was a bit of a sorry state. I mean, Mickey Gall, the first opponent, who I think Mickey Gall was pretty decent, to be honest with you. They didn't stick him against somebody, you know, relatively unknown. Like if that was wrestling, they would have put him against somebody completely, like a squash match. But Dana White threw him in against somebody who, you know, he'd found, I think, on what was that show he used to do?
Looking for a fight.
Find a fight. Yeah. And I saw him on that, and I was like, "Oh my god!" Like, unless CM Punk does stuff that I don't know about, but the sparring didn't look great leading into it, and I was quite fearful. my hat's off for him giving it a go. And if I'm CM Punk, Phil Brooks, and Dana White is throwing money at me to go and do a fight, and he wants to do that, then why not? However, I think most UFC MMA fans would say, he perhaps should have started on another promotion, another less MMA known promotion, and at least get a couple of fights underneath his belt before he shows up on UFC. But at the same time, I think if that had happened, maybe UFC doesn't even put him on by that point because, he might have been exposed too much. And Dana White probably just thought, you know what? Name power alone, he's going to spike a little bit of interest from the WWE fans to come and have a look. And, they might buy the pay-per-view. But that last fight he did with
Mike Jackson.
Mike Jackson was, that guy was a nightmare. He was throwing bolo punches, really taking the piss. I felt sorry for CM Punk by the end of it, but hats off to him for going in there, giving it a go. But it wasn't probably it wasn't for. I can't imagine you guys at the top there were happy seeing somebody like CM Punk get that opportunity, sort of leapfrogging other guys.
I've got to go to my cousin on this one because he was very vocal before CM Punk set foot in the octagon. But Chris, take it away with your views of CM Punk in the UFC before he set foot in there, and then what happened in the two fights he had.
I agree with John. It's admirable, that he got in there and done it. You know what I mean? None of us four are ever gonna, go and do something like that. Or even have the balls to go and do something like that. So you have to tip your hat and say, CM Punk, well done for that. But yeah, too late, too old. And yeah, it did annoy me that there was a lot of fighters out there in the likes of Cage Warriors that got, could have got that spot themselves and made a name for themselves and were pushed back. Paddy, who was just signed for the UFC, was vying for a spot at the same time CM Punk got one, and CM Punk got that one over him. And he was an up-and-comer at Cage Warriors at the time. Regards to him fighting, he had a good camp. Rufus fought you had Anthony Pettis, you had your Tyron Woodleys, you had Ben Askren. So, he had all the best people around him. But, it's like now me starting a job at 39 is, a skill job. It's too late in the day. And, and I agree, Mickey Gall looked far better than his record showed. Mike Jackson, that fight should never taken place because it was an embarrassment. Absolute embarrassment to the sport. I don't know. That was more like, some sort of thing you get on X Factor that they're just trying to show off something. It was terrible. And Mike Jackson pissed around that much. He got sacked as soon as the fight finished.
It's even worse. It's even worse, man.
But like I say, I commend CM Punk for what he did. I was in and out of WWE at that point, so I already sort of saw bits and bobs of CM Punk. I remember him in the early days when he first won the title. Against Edge when he cashed in the Money in the Bank?
Yeah, he did.
I remember. Yeah, he came down to Killswitch Engage, I think, didn't he? At that point, I remember him there, and he used to say he was really good in the Indies, wasn't he? If you'd been staying, I'll be nice here. I would have said to CM Punk, "Stay in your lane."
Justin Clapper, your thoughts on CM Punk in a wrestling capacity and an MMA capacity, if you want to. What are your thoughts on CM Punk, the man, the enigma?
CM Punk tore it up on the Indies right around my senior, Southern, Milwaukee, Chicago, and stuff. And he was, we were all back in that day very hungry, and doing the drives, as they say, and doing stuff. And the fact that he got to make it on the biggest stage of them all, really behind his promos first, I would think, and then his wrestling, his professional wrestling ability. I will argue that Dana White, basically there was a no-brainer for him to put him on the UFC cards because it was a gamble. It was gonna pay off at least once. You were gonna have the hype, and you were gonna have some of the buys based on Phil Brooks, CM Punk coming in. You were going to get that crossover from wrestling fan at least once. And then my hat's off for CM Punk for going back and doing it again. Grueling training. I think he knew that he was old for this, but like, hey, this is my dream. I'm going to give it a shot. And as far as him taking a spot away from somebody else, that's happened in our business too. Somebody's a model looking bodybuilder, and hey, we're going to put all our shine on this guy and bring him in. And then you look at guys that are toiling in purgatory, wrestling purgatory forever, going, why did this guy ever get a shot? Well, he didn't have the movie star looks, the charisma or whatever that somebody else has. So I think it happens everywhere. But sound like BS because I'm going to echo both of the guys' statements ahead of me. Hats off for him checking it out and doing it. Tremendous in the ring. Can you imagine if he signs somewhere? I talk with my hands, don't I, on here? But can you imagine, he's got to sign somewhere, I think, before it's all said and done, where he comes in and somebody opens the checkbook for him. I would think, and maybe he does some type of capacity, or the lawsuit he just went through, and he's just absolutely done dealing with everybody's BS. But Phil Brooks is the guy who did it his way.
I think just before I say about his wrestling career and matches I've seen at WrestleMania in person, because he had the show stealers for years when I was in attendance, in my opinion. Chris, I know he was signed to that deal with UFC, so Duke Rufus's hands were tied. He had to train him, but surely Duke Rufus knew what the warning signs were. I know he was training hard. I get that. He was fully committed, but he must have known he couldn't get him to the caliber of fight in the UFC.
It's too little. It's too little in a day, wasn't it?
It was just a poison chalice, wasn't it?
Well, he had a pick of camps he could have gone to. Daniel Cormier, as you well know, is a big wrestling fan. He offered his services, an AKA to train him. You know what I mean? I suppose it's a big name for your camp to have, isn't it? It's like you say, having Brock Lesnar in your camp. So you know what I mean? It'd get more people streaming in. I'll do say one good thing that CM Punk did after his UFC career. He did do a color commentary for CFFC on Fight Pass.
I remember.
And he wasn't too bad, to be fair. You know what I mean? He wasn't that bad. I quite enjoyed him on the commentary. But like I say, and again, I echo the same. Hats off for doing it. Just stay in wrestling or do your comic books.
And that, to be fair to the guy, he stood by his word. Look how many people have come back into the business. JC's laughing here. he said, look how many people have been chanting CM Punk in the arenas for years after his last hurrah at Royal Rumble 2014. He did Starcast, but he only does it in an interview capacity. He stuck to his guns, and I think that's admirable because, who knows, AEW might throw something at him, Impact, someone like that, Ring of Honor to a lesser extent. I don't think they'll be able to pay for him maybe, but I think in terms of wrestling, I'll just go back to what I was saying about WrestleMania matches I've seen, and the cards are pretty solid. He had an absolute show stealer with Rey Mysterio at WrestleMania 26 when he was in the Straight Edge Society, which was cut too short. What an angle that was, the Straight Edge Society. That could have gone on longer. They had absolute gold with that on SmackDown. Then the following year against Randy Orton at WrestleMania 27, I know we had Undertaker and Triple H, but being there physically in attendance, and then just a couple of years after that, the match with Undertaker, I know his head wasn't straight and he wanted to be higher up and going for the title and stuff, as he said on record. The match with Undertaker at 29, being in attendance, incredible. So, yeah. You've spoke so eloquently about his MMA side. I was just going to chime in there with my little bit about his wrestling and what I'd seen. So there we go. And actually, before I go, Money in the Bank 2011, what a match. Just before we get into our next one, Chris, you enjoyed that match. You Money in the Bank 2011 with Cena. Where he ran off with the title and he blew Vince a kiss. And we all thought it was like legit.
He dropped a pipe bomb, didn't he, as they say? And everyone thought that was it real, what he was saying, wearing his Austin 316 t-shirt. I still have that somewhere, actually, that was like the same t-shirt. Don't think it'd fit me now, I'm fat. Like I say, I commend him for everything he did in wrestling. He had charisma, he had that it factor, and you could see, as you're saying, people still chanting his name. How many people still do that now for people? I
think just being able to blur the lines of reality. the way he did, because so much stuff had been done in the business, and people believed he was legit going. They believed it, and we knew it was scripted, and we still thought it was legit. His beef with Vince. So it's just incredible, absolutely incredible. And can I just go back a little bit as well? I remember seeing him on Impact with Raven, with Julio De Niro, and I wouldn't have thought then he was going to get to the heady heights in like 2008, 2011. I couldn't have seen it. I know he'd done his stuff in ROH. I know he'd had his matches with Joe. He'd had Daniel Bryan, all the top guys. IWA before that, matches with Chris Hero, trained by Ace Steel, Colt Cabana. So yeah, that's my thoughts on CM Punk. The wrestler, I think he did so much great stuff for the business, especially for independent guys coming through. I think he paved the way before, it was the dumb thing. So there we go. Right, into the next one. Sorry, gents, I was rambling. Kurt Angle, how good could he have been in a wrestling sense, in an MMA sense? I'm going to throw it to JC first because he's looking at me.
I was confused. What do you mean? How good could he have been? What else does he need to do?
Right. Could he have crossed over into MMA? I think that's what I'm getting at.
Oh, I mean, he's obviously got the ground game and stuff. Yeah, I wouldn't be able to. That would be a better question for you guys above than me, because the fan of him as an amateur and a professional wrestler wants to jump on and go, yeah, I think he could have done great. But dude, I don't know how many meat hooks the guy could take in the face. I have no idea how well he could throw. I mean,
take out the broken neck. Then I know he won the Olympic gold with the broken neck.
Freaking neck.
Get freaking in there. Sorry, yeah. What I think, in my opinion, he could have done very well in the cage. Absolutely. So, JC, I'll put it to you. If he didn't have the broken freaking neck and he could have done it, what do you think then?
I don't know if he can freaking throw meat hooks and take
him down. Take him down. That's all he's got to do. He's elite. He's an elite wrestler, collegiate, Olympic.
Well, yeah, his ground game's going to be huge.
Yeah.
I just don't know if he's got the proverbial glass jaw or anything. But I want to say he's our Olympic hero that I think he would have done well.
Did you watch him in the Olympics, JC? Can you remember?
I had the wrestling on as much as I could. I always have the amateur, but I can't go back and recall that I actually, how time is funny and you're like, did I watch it live or was it on tape afterwards? So that's where I'm at with that. But what an amazing performance, an amazing athlete, just heart and guts. But yeah, again, I will want to say he would do great in an MMA, but you guys are going to know better than me if he would have done well.
John Scott, I'm coming to you now. Chris is like, I'm the best one to answer this. I'm going to come to you last.
I've got the WrestleMania sign, buddy.
Because I managed to butcher it with JC, didn't I? Yeah. But there we go. Right, John Scott, your thoughts? What could he have done? Could he have done it in MMA as good as he was doing pro wrestling?
I think he would have had a better chance than CM Punk. But yeah, I think with Kurt Angle, I've heard that story. I'm sure you have as well, Stu and JC, about that fight that went down the chute on a SmackDown taping. That was a lot of the boys were around the ring. Brock and Angle, and on Something to Wrestle With or JR's podcast, the version is that Kurt Angle won that legit shoot fight, regardless of the weight difference between them. That was Kurt Angle's victory. So I think Angle was a pretty decent, fighter. I mean, I think he had that competitive edge that you'd need, certainly. I got a feeling that he would have done all right at the time just after the Olympics. But the problem is MMA evolved so much. Everybody kind of learned lots of different disciplines, not just one or two. So if it was a wrestler against the stand-up fight, of course, he's probably going to win 9 times out of 10, providing he gets him to the floor. It's game over. But I don't know. I suppose it depends what era or generation he would have gone in. Because 96, I mean, UFC was a lot different then. I would have given him a pretty decent shot. given what was around. But as it evolved, I'm not too sure. But yeah, he was very good in both. I think Kurt Angle. The only thing I was majorly disappointed is the way WWE treated him at the end with that match with Baron Corbin. I thought it was ridiculous.
So stupid.
I think he should have got a lot better than that. Yeah, he should have got a lot better than that. He is, for me, he's one of the pound for pound best pro wrestlers in his generation. Really is. He gets overlooked because obviously he had a lot of run in Impact Wrestling as well. But for me, he's one of the very best. And I was going to say something else, but it's completely gone out of my mind. So you'll have to come back to me if I think about it. But for me, Kurt Angle as a wrestler, you can't really beat it, mate. You cannot beat it.
Mr. Hume, you had a nugget of information as it pertains to Ultimate Fighter and Kurt Angle that you spoke about to me off camera a few days ago. So yeah, just what Kurt Angle in MMA and obviously the links with UFC that happened some years ago.
Well, if you want to go to the nugget, as you say, he tried out for season 10 of Ultimate Fighter, which was just heavyweights, which had Kimbo Slice, funny enough, in that particular series. And apparently he was in favour with everybody, all happy with him. And then when they obviously went and did checks, as they have to do on each fighter, it was obviously his neck, which was the issue. So obviously they had to tell him then, obviously there was a no-go. But if you want to say regards to being an actual MMA fighter, yeah, I wouldn't disagree with anybody what you've all said. You know what I mean? There has been Olympic wrestlers that have come in and transitioned very well. Let's just say Daniel Cormier was an Olympic wrestler. Ben Askren was Olympic. Dan Henderson was. So Henry Cejudo. Henry Cejudo won gold. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's the transition period, isn't it? You could say, yeah, you might not be able to take strikes, but yeah, efficiently, a good wrestler takes everybody down and holds them down. Ben Askren, for one, if you see him, I'm sure you'll know about him in Jake Paul currently, and less said about that is enough. But as a wrestler, Ben Askren was an Olympic wrestler, and throughout his Bellator to ONE FC days, all he did was take people down and beat them up on the floor. And I think if you're at that Olympic level-esque as a wrestler, you're going to win 8 times out of 10 fights because you've got that pedigree, and he had that pedigree. It would have been interesting to see how he'd get on, or what weight class would he have gone at? Would he have been at heavyweight?
I think 205 personally. I think because he was about 220, 225 probably in WWE. You've got to be 230 to 260. Even Ngannou was nearly 270 on the weekend. I think it would have been a stretch heavyweight. Sorry, Chris, I jumped in.
No, it's fine. I'd ask just a question out there.
Yeah.
No, I think he would have done. I think he would have done okay. He could have challenged for a title. I'm not going to say he would have won the title because, as John said, then it depends on what decade you're putting Kurt Angle in. Because if you're saying 205, say early to mid 90s, you had your Chuck Liddells, your Titos, not easy fights, and then so on. You've got your John Joneses, haven't you? And the better fighters start popping up as we get into the later 2000s. So I think he would have done okay. I think he would have challenged for a title. I think he would have beaten quite a few fighters with the pedigree of being an Olympic wrestler.
Perfectly surmised. Mr. Clapper.
I just want to add, if he was training from his Olympic career, jumping straight in to training for an MMA career, then that's awesome, because he would need some coaching. Because if you remember, I just had thought of it as John was talking, when he challenges in a shoot the Tough Enough competitors on SmackDown, and Daniel Puder gets him down in the Chimera lock, and he's done unless Jimmy Corderas counts to 3. I mean, he had nothing.
It was a near shambles, that was.
Yeah.
He was. They were worried he wasn't letting go, was he?
He wasn't gonna.
That's disastrous. That would have been disastrous looking back, man.
Even when you go back and they count to 3, and Daniel's like, "What the frick?" I had the guy down. And they're forcing him off. So,
man, I remember having Daniel Puder on my show about 4 times, and all he spoke about was Kurt Angle. Like, you couldn't take his mind off it. He was going to fight Kurt Angle at the Hall of Fame. I mean, I used to have him on every year, and it would always have 20 minutes worth of Kurt Angle. It was absolute gold. But he just rung a bell there.
It happened in 2003. It's like, come on. It's like, it's been and gone. It's been and gone, Pewter. They would have done it at the time if Vince had used his noggin a bit better. But there we go. Yeah, I think with Kurt Angle, as we were saying about, stages of the UFC and what it was like in the 90s and into 2000s, I think he would have done pretty well in the early days, but it's just got better and better as the UFC's gone on and the standard, and they're also well-versed in all the styles of fighting. So, yeah, that's my take. But I know Steve Austin says about, obviously, his wrestling career and how quickly he rose up the ranks. I don't think there's anybody quicker. Maybe Lesnar, but he did superb in pro wrestling. There's no two ways about it. And so quick. And it was the comedic side as well, wasn't it? It brought his comedic side. He could do a bit of everything. Entertainment at the fore. Absolutely. The stuff with Cena, the rap battles with Cena, they used to make me laugh. The stuff with Sherry singing a sexy voice with Sherry.
That was the best one.
Oh, my days. So, yeah, I think we've encapsulated Kurt Angle pretty well there. Moving on. Ronda Rousey. Seamless transition into WWE or not? We're going into wrestling now. A fighter coming into wrestling. I'm going to throw it to Mr. Hume first on this one because he followed Ronda's career in the UFC and then it was coming into WWE.
What can you say? You can't say too bad things about the girl. She's the one that changed Dana White's mind. If you remember the infamous TMZ video, and he said he's never going to have a women's division. It was her in Strikeforce when they bought Strikeforce out that forced that, and she was the head honcho for the women's divisions. Controlled best ever. I think she was at the time. I think towards the end of her career, she was getting caught up by the likes of Holly Holm. Amanda Nunes, as you see now, is an absolute beast of her own. She was a class above everybody for such a long time. Apart from, I think, her striking was awful. But, when you've got Edson in the back corner of the octagon telling you, when you're getting beaten up by Holly Holm, oh, your striking's really well. And she's getting pieced up through the whole octagon. You're like, are you seeing what I'm seeing here? You know what I mean? But going back to it, yeah, she deserves to be in the Hall of Fame in MMA. And I don't know, regards to what she was like for you guys in wrestling, but she was a hard worker.
Mr. John Scott, your thoughts on Ronda coming into WWE from UFC?
I'm wearing a top, Stu, today. The rowdy one. So here's the thing. I'll let you into a secret. So I wasn't watching UFC for a long time until everybody kept talking about this Ronda Rousey and this crazy streak and how fast she was submitting and all these clips of her almost breaking girls' arms and all the rest of it. So it kind of got me hooked. And considering what you said as well about, Dana wasn't interested in having female fighters, I think one of the biggest things she did in UFC, it kind of helped or made, should I say, WWE change their outlook on their females, especially because all of a sudden Vince is looking over thinking, hang on, she's selling pay-per-views on just her name. It wasn't like you had Ronda against another big name. It was, we want to watch a Ronda Rousey fight. So she's selling them on her own. And I think that made Vince think very differently about everything. And I think she influenced wrestling in a very positive way, that you can have both. I mean, Ronda at the time, she was kind of considered like not, I suppose, like athlete looking in that way, if you know what I mean. Like she had a nice crossover, and you could always tell. I mean, obviously she'd followed wrestling, I think, from a very early age. She was a big Piper fan, and in wrestling, I think she was very badly guided. Whoever kept telling her to smile all the time was completely wrong. I think she would have much suited a heel to begin with. And I thought she was actually really, really good. I'll tell you why. It's because she'd do things that would make even the most sort of mark out fans who think they know everything, she would really wind those up as well, because she knew how to push their buttons on the socials, and she would go out of her way to do things like that. So I actually really enjoyed it. It was more of a throwback of watching how Hill used to do things using social media in a much better way, rather than what we see a lot of today. But I think she was just misguided. I don't think personally, I would say she didn't live up to her full potential so far. Whether we see her again in WWE, I'm not too sure, but I don't think we saw the best of her. But I think as far as a character, she got it in the end.
Justin, JC, your thoughts on Ronda Rousey coming into the WWE? I'm sure you got a lot to say.
And I'll try to keep it short. And the shortest thing I can say about her is she main evented WrestleMania. WrestleMania 35, she main evented WrestleMania. Coming from the first time that we saw her with The Rock, Triple H, and Stephanie McMahon in, you guys will have to help me with the number, but it was in San Francisco.
I was there. I was there for it. I was in attendance. It was raucous. And even with her being with The Rock, the man mountain that The Rock is, the crowd were just as invested with her being there, because you weren't expecting her to be there. UFC, there wasn't really that relationship between Vince and Dana, or so we thought. Sorry, JC.
No, you're fine. Because I didn't know the number, but echoing on what these gentlemen have said, she came in, maybe a little bit if they were telling her to smile and stuff, but she was that crossover athlete. She's the total package. She's got that MMA pedigree in her. She looks good. She's, for years, she's not going to be in a bra and panties match is what I love. She's going to be an athletic, kick-ass girl. The only thing is, if her socials were an attempt to rile up some fans, she riled me up with some of her comments on our sport, on her, what did she have, like a YouTube show or something? And there were some outtakes where she really took it out on pro wrestling, which I'm like, hey, if that was said to rile up the fans, you might have riled some of us up as well. But I'd welcome her back. I think she puts butts in the buckets, and when we can have buckets and butts at a show, I think she'll put them in there. Still, although I'm not certain. Did she have a family? She had a child now, or is pregnant with a child or something? She's doing her family thing. I never heard more on that.
No.
Travis not got a kid now. Travis Brown, though.
I've not seen him mention anything about that. I know she does a video game streaming, doesn't she, at the moment? I've not seen him mention anything about her and Travis Brown having a kid. But I know that was something when she left WWE that she was going to do.
Yeah, that was talk. Whether that was just, it's hard to differentiate. I can't even say that word, but between what is fact and fiction with all the internet things on. But bottom line, Becky Lynch, Charlotte Flair, Ronda Rousey, the first main event with female athletes in it, and so she's reached that. She's reached a pinnacle that I got to tell you what, there's not going to be a whole heck of a lot of other women in the near future that I see hitting that.
JC, what was it like being in attendance for that? I'm sure you've been asked.
It was great. We had with Wrestling Travel. I hate to do a shameless promotion, but I might as well get it in. Come with Wrestling Travel. We had some pretty decent seats, but it's a long card in April in New York where hoodies sold out immediately, so it was a little chilly. But I tell you what, when you had all those entrances and Ronda Rousey coming out with Joan Jett and the Blackhearts are right there playing her in.
Amazing.
It was great. I've got it on video. I'll have to send it to you guys. But yeah, just being in attendance, and the crowd went wild. Everybody wanted Becky, but I'm sure they would have. Ronda Rousey with that New York crowd would have. I think whoever would have went over, but obviously the odds on was Becky. But Wrestling Travel took good care of everybody that was there. We had great seats. We got to watch the fight, and then we got to wait 6 hours in the rain because public transport got shut down. But hey, you can't dampen our spirits.
I've got to say,
just a shameless plug, if you come with us to Dallas, we've got a shuttle bus to the stadium and back to your hotel.
You've learned logistically, haven't you? You learned the hard way there in New York, but yeah, they'll be well looked after, won't they? The people that come into Dallas. And I've been to Dallas and it's fantastic. The stadium is amazing. So, yeah. My thoughts on her, I think it's been good for your Shayna Baszlers, Jessamine Duke, and also Marina Shafir. She's obviously friendly with them from the MMA background. They had a lot of exposure collectively on NXT. I know Shayna then went on to the main roster. She's tagging, isn't she, at the moment and stuff like that. But Shayna was superb in NXT as champion, as women's champion, 100%. So she has paved the way, Ronda. I think going back to what John said, I think they should have turned her heel because she did lose the crowd. I noticed on the socials in arenas, stadiums, the fans weren't behind her like they were when she came in, when they unveiled her at the Rumble in 2018.
Not to interrupt, but you're right, John. She did get thrown off by the crowd, didn't she, at times? That's what was one of the things. Now that I remember, yes. Okay.
But going back to New Orleans when it was her and Angle versus Steph and Triple H, what a match.
That was good, yeah.
She was fantastic. That was her first match, wasn't it? She didn't have anything prior to that one at WrestleMania, did she? So I know she's obviously used to crowds of UFC, but she was amazing considering who she was in there with. Two of the titans of WrestleMania, two of the biggest draws in wrestling. She held her own and some. Right, I'll shut up now. The next one, Chris is going to love this. Mr. Matt Riddle.
Hey, you got to drop the first name now.
Oh, Riddle. You know what I mean? Batman, riddle me this, riddle me that. Sometimes you just leave him with Matt Riddle. He's been known as Matt Riddle in the UFC. Just keep the name. It's WWE, isn't it? It's what they like to do. Yeah. Made for WWE or made for MMA. I'm going to put it to JC first. I'm going to come to Chris in a bit.
Matt Riddle is somebody that I just lost I forgot what I was going to say. I'm sorry.
Will that get you stirred up seeing the photo?
The flash.
No, I was quoting Monday Night Raw, Stu, where he completely squashed his lines. I
haven't seen it.
Okay, sorry about that.
No, it's okay. Carry on. No, it's all right.
He's not my favorite guy. He's not. I don't like the gimmick. I don't like the character. I don't see him. Even though he does have a belt right now, I don't picture that guy holding a world championship someday. I don't think. There's got to be some type of seriousness. He's an athlete, obviously. He's great, but they need to, they're too much on the bro and the THC for my liking. That I do think that you need to do something a little more serious. Maybe a heel Matt Riddle is somebody I'll like and get behind because he can take the craft more seriously. But for right now, he's not my cup of tea. A lot of people like him, so my opinion doesn't matter. So,
were you aware of what he was doing in the independents prior to coming to WWE? Did you know what was going on?
A little bit. Our mutual friend Rico De La Vega is good friends with them and stuff like that. So a lot of great guy. I can't get behind that character. I can't do it.
That's it's opinion.
As much as I'd like to, and probably a great guy off the thing. I just think need to be a little more serious intentions behind him, and then I think I'll get behind him.
Do you know what the obvious thing would be to say here, and how Rob Van Dam was hamstrung having to because they were writing for him. Remember his promos? He was pissed off. No, OVD wasn't he? He didn't want to be saying cool, whatever, bro. I bet Matt Riddle's the same. They're almost hamstrung by a writer. Just let them be themselves. Let them say what they want to say. They do it in AEW on their promos.
Yeah, you're right. And the bro thing has become a joke when I talk with people, but that's going to get old really quick,
What about kicking the flip-flops off when he's getting in the ring? Do you like that?
You know what? I would fall on my ass, so I got to respect him for that.
We got one good point about Riddle there. I thought I had to ask about the flip-flops getting kicked off. John Scott, your views on Matt Riddle as it pertains to, was he better in MMA or was he better where he is now, where he's found wrestling since about 2015 when he came into the business officially?
I believe he was a decent fighter. I mean, he didn't lose, did he? But he didn't really get anywhere either to be able to know how good he was going to be. So it'll always be an unknown thing. But I've met him a few times. I actually met him once outside it was the Wembley show they did, Progress, and he was out having a fag in his flip-flops. And I've got to be honest with you, he actually does talk like that a lot. Because I had a whole conversation with the guy talking like that. And then I met him again at another Progress show. And again, he was exactly the same. I just think with WWE, they've just really emphasized this bro thing. And like the music's bro, everything's bro. The bloody finisher will be called bro something or whatever. But on the independents, he was getting quite touted to being like the next big thing. I remember a lot of people saying like the next Steve Austin at one point. I don't know if I'd have put him that high, but he was very much touted as going to be the next guy. But yeah, I mean, in wrestling, I have no problems with him. I think in WWE, I don't enjoy the character. I don't really enjoy his matches as much as I used to, because he used to have a lot more freedom. So it's kind of one of those things. I mean, I would imagine he'll only get so far with WWE, and then maybe he goes back to MMA. I mean, I wouldn't rule it out yet.
Chris is not. Chris is not.
It's going to make him happy.
JC?
Before you turn it over to Chris, when you said somebody said he's the next Steve Austin, I heard some people saying he's the next Kerry Von Erich. Get the heck out of here! Get out of here!
Dude, you got to have a bit of
you
got to have a bit of seriousness to be even, and you've got to be a kick-ass. You've got to have like a bit. I don't know. He's got to.
I think he needs to be heel.
I'm excited to hear Chris, man. I tell you that.
Chris,
I think we all are.
I know where you're going to go with this. It's going to be Matt Riddle as it pertains to MMA. I remember him in the Ultimate Fighter years ago. He was a bit of a character on screen. So, what are your thoughts on Matt Riddle, the MMA fighter? Because we've had a bit about WWE, and then I'll chime in after you.
He was an average fighter. I wouldn't say he was awful per se, but he had an attitude that obviously got him kicked out of UFC. And he failed a lot of drug tests for smoking weed at the time when it obviously was illegal to do that during fight week. I didn't like his attitude. He thought he was the biggest and baddest person at welterweight at the time, and I think he was below average, to be honest with you. He didn't like the British fans, if I remember rightly. He used to say that when he fought I can't remember his second name, but it was
Che Mills.
That's it, yeah. Che Mills in London, that one of the British fans spat in his mouth as he was walking towards the octagon. Didn't like British people at that point, said we were all scummy. So obviously at that point...
Depends who you ask.
Well, yeah. But I to be honest with you, I didn't like his attitude, and he thought, like I say, his shoes were too big for him. Like, and I was quite happy to see him piss off somewhere else, to be honest with you. He wasn't for me. I think he would have been one of those guys in MMA, and if, as John says, if he ever went back, he'd be stuck in, your ranked 30 to 20 fighting bums and getting spat in the mouth. Not a big fan. I don't know what he's like in WWE, but he sounds like as much of an arsehole as he was when he was in MMA.
I got a question.
Go on, John.
I just want to throw the question to you real quick. Let's say Matt Riddle, he has another year in WWE, he's Intercontinental Champion, sells more merchandise, and then he says, he gets on the blower to Dana White. Does Dana White have him back, or does Dana White say no, thank you?
Dana White will say no. Well, I don't know, actually. It's a good question because big names make money, don't they? Dana White never liked him anyway. There's a video on YouTube of Dana White going completely mad about Matt Riddle. I don't think he'll be big enough, even if he carries on in being the Intercontinental Champion. I don't think he's big enough, especially if you watch UFC and see how amazing the welterweight division is currently. I think Dana White would entertain it. He'd probably say, go to Bellator or go to ONE FC or go to Cage Warriors. Don't come back here.
You'll fight Mac Jackson.
Yeah,
Mike Jackson. That'll be him.
What was he doing the other week backstage? I know the baseball stadium's got huge outbuildings and all that in the backstage area. He was on a scooter. They had him on a scooter backstage last week before, and he's talking to Nakamura. And it's like, why? These two guys can do it, physically, in a physical aspect. Why put them in a vignette backstage? It made both of them look silly. It was absolutely, I was dumbfounded, man. Why is he rolling around on a scooter? You know, he was hiding in a plane with Pete Dunne in NXT in the luggage bit. You're just making him stupid. They're gonna have to turn him heel. They're gonna have to turn the man heel. You're right what you're saying. Just give him. They're gonna have to bring it out of him. It's. I think it's done. And also, do you know what? He was brought up too soon as well. I'll say it. But they do have a tendency, WWE, bringing the guys up too soon. We know this. We know this. I think he could have stayed in NXT a bit longer, personally. I think they've got enough talent there and they don't know what the hell they're doing with it, but that's just a story for another day. The final segment, I'm going to get Mr. Crowhurst to fire the images in at random. It's honourable mentions. Mr. Producer, fire an image up and we'll just go with what we think seeing the said image. At random.
Say what you say.
We talked about Shayna earlier.
Thumbs up. Big thumbs up.
JC, what do you think of Shayna? Sorry.
I love her. I just hate to see somebody that's as bad as she is take some silly losses and stuff. I would like to see her get away from that tag team that she's in with that other lady that is probably taking a spot away from another deserving lady. But I got a lot of love for Baszler.
John?
Yeah, for me, one of the best, especially in NXT. I watched her a few times live in person, and she had it. She knew how to carry herself as well, and really, really delved into her character. Like, she is her character. Unfortunately, on the main roster, I just think she's a little bit lost, but she's still good enough to come back. Like, if they put enough eggs in her basket, she can still pull it off again, I believe.
Chris, what have you seen much of Shayna in a WWE capacity? I know you're aware of her.
Yeah, I'm aware.
Maybe talk about UFC and what she did.
I was going to say, I don't know too much about her MMA background, if I'm honest.
She was good outside of UFC in the early days. I think she was fighting over in Japan at the time. Until obviously UFC signed her when obviously Ronda Rousey exploded. You mean Jessamine Duke and all that sort of fruiting into Ultimate Fighter, and they signed Shayna Baszler. She did okay. I think at the point she signed for the UFC, she was a bit older, had quite a lot of fights at that point, and I think it was very mediocre. I think the way you guys explain the way she is in WWE, I think she's obviously better suited now for you guys than she would be in mixed martial arts.
I think she's done fantastic. I agree with JC. Tagging when she was having some of the best matches down in NXT as champion. And look at the match possibilities up on the main roster. But they put her in a tag team. No disrespect to Nia Jax, the tag team champions. No, I'm not gonna shit on. I'm not gonna shit on Nia Jax. She gets enough shit with the memes and stuff recently. Bless her. I saw her at Access one year. She was lovely. What a lovely, pleasant girl. She wasn't signing or anything, but she was milling in with the crowd. Lovely lady. Anyway, back to Shayna. Yeah, Shayna, get her in the singles capacity. Give her Asuka. Give her somebody. Rhea Ripley. Get her over to Raw. I've just knocked it again.
Get fired up.
We're all going to watch you do it.
I've got to put these into Bluetooth mode. I did this on WT podcast. Justin will say it. Yeah, singles capacity. Well, even on Raw and SmackDown, there's so many match possibilities for her. Look, Rhea Ripley's up now. They can do so much, and I don't think she gets enough credit for a run in NXT either. Because they're always churning them out and putting girls in, and the roster's very good. The roster's very good down there again. I'm really hot on Raquel Gonzalez. I think she's brilliant. She's superb talent. But Shayna, just get her out the tag team, like JC said. Mr. Producer, the next photo, please. Rampage Jackson.
Forgot about him.
A legend of Pride. A legend of Pride, the UFC. He crossed over into Impact. We actually saw him on Raw when they were plugging the A-Team film. He was backstage, I remember, and he was on the Raw show. Thoughts on Rampage Jackson, Chris, in MMA firstly?
First, actually, when he did that Raw thing, he did a powerbomb someone in the ring at the end of the segment for the A-Team, and not Raw, if I remember rightly. But he wasn't known for... He wasn't known for a powerbomb.
Yeah, it was a go-to move for Rampage, the old powerbomb in the cage.
Yeah, he ruined Ricardo Regulona's fighting career after that powerbomb in Pride. Completely KO'd him, and then Ricardo Regulona was done then after that. He was a An interesting character was Rampage Jackson. Pride, he was absolutely fantastic. He beat Chuck Liddell when Dana White sent Chuck Liddell in to prove that UFC was the better product. And he knocked out Chuck Liddell, which Chuck Liddell at that point had never been knocked out. He's only been submitted. He had some good wars with Vanderlei Silva. He obviously got those terrible knees by Vanderlei Silva, which you can see all over the internet. No, he's good. He got to the UFC after obviously UFC bought out Pride, fought for the title, beat Chuck Liddell for it. Again, knocked out Chuck Liddell for the title. He was, an interesting character. Ultimate Fighters, season 10. If you ever watched that, ripping doors down. Him and Rashad Evans together were
they didn't like
comical.
Each other.
Comical.
They hated each other at that point, didn't they, Chris?
Yeah.
That was a natural. That wasn't put on for the cameras. That
he went from a wrestler with a power puncher to just do power punches. And I think after a while in UFC, before he split, he was fed up of being matched with wrestlers. Obviously, he went to Bellator. He had, I think he was at the tail end of his career, and I think he's still on the roster at Bellator. But I haven't seen him fight for a while. No, he was good. He was a character. And you can see why he got B.A. Baracus, because he just, it just emulated with it all, didn't he? He's an interesting character. But like I say, a fabulous fighter in this time.
I'm gonna throw it to JC now. Rampage Jackson, your thoughts?
I got to tell you, I don't recall him doing much with Impact, so I got to say stick to MMA. I do think the door thing of which Chris referenced, I do remember him beating up a door like it was made out of balsa wood, and I'm like, what?
Yeah.
What is going on? I didn't know if this is a work or a shoot. So loved them in the A-Team. Can't wait for A-Team Part 2.
Perfect. John Scott, thoughts on Rampage Jackson in MMA and wrestling?
I didn't really. I followed him more in MMA than I did the Impact Wrestling TNA. But I do remember when they brought him in and they were trying to make a big deal of it, like it was their version of Tyson and stuff like that, and it never really was. I'm not sure. Like, everyone thought he would be a really good crossover because of the mic, but I remember him being quite uncomfortable on it. So I don't think it worked out 100% for him over there.
He did. He worked the program. They brought King Mo into Impact as well. I remember that he was involved with King Mo. That was like crossover as well. But yeah, in terms of fighting, Chris, he trained in the UK for MMA, didn't he? He was at Wolf's Lair, which when you've got all the elite places in America to go and train, he was training in the UK, and he was still successful, wasn't he? Some people would be like, why was he training at Wolf's Lair when you've got all like the top draw places in America? So what are your thoughts on that one with him training in the UK?
I suppose it was different. I suppose, like I say, when we spoke about it on Big Fight Weekly, just when we're doing combat, he went to the UK because at that point we were known for the striking game. It wasn't wrestling, was it, per se, in the UK? The UK fighters were predominantly strikers with a bit of jiu-jitsu and a tad bit of maybe wrestling here and there. And he trained with Michael Bisping at that point because Michael Bisping was one of the best output when it came to strikes. There was a nice picture of Rampage Jackson with an Everton shirt floating around the internet, which I just thought I'd pop that one in there. I think it was just mainly for the striking, and I think he wanted to change his setup, and he wanted to get away from the wrestling, the grind, and that's obviously why he went to Volslayer. All ended up quite bad in the end anyway. A lot of lawsuits, and there's not a lot of things been said per se, but not been very good. Obviously, with their relationship, obviously Volslayer is done now as a gym anyway.
Chet Congo was there as well, wasn't he? At the same time, training. They had Chet Congo, who was quite he's a well-known heavyweight at the time. So they had some guys over in Liverpool at the time. I just found it crazy. He's from Memphis. I know they travel to another state to train. You don't have to do it in your home state. But I'm just surprised he trained over here. I know I've made a big hoo-ha about that. So, have we got one more, Rich? Yes, we have. Chris, I know how much you love Kane. I've got to go to you first. You had Velasquez in your Facebook name for years. Kane Velasquez as a professional fighter in MMA first, because WWE was short-lived.
Well, I'll tell you this now. Kane Velasquez, you saw in WWE was the Kane Velasquez I remember. And loved Cain Velasquez, got behind Cain Velasquez. He was called Sea-Level Cain for a reason. He had cardio that most heavyweights at that time, well, I suppose actually still now to this day, never had his output and the cardio of how hard Cain Velasquez could go. Like I say, he beat Brock Lesnar, and that's when Brock Lesnar actually met a legit, elite level fighter. He had great wars with JDS. I think he ruined JDS pretty much in their trilogy because the Santos was never the same fighter after that. It's just injuries that ruined it. I mean, AKA are known to go hard when they're training, and obviously this took its toll. And it's just a shame. Like I say, I was quite interested when he went to WWE. I've seen some clips of him doing Hurricanranas and stuff in Mexico, so I was quite intrigued. But it's just a sad thing for him now because where is he and what does he do?
Justin Clapper, thoughts on Kane and his brief? I know he had a brief stint in WWE. I know they put him with Ray, the Mexican thing, and all that. What were your thoughts? What were your thoughts on Kane in WWE? I know it was only brief, but I want to.
Yeah, WWE not so much, but the fact that he put the mask on and fought some lucha matches and stuff before he went to WWE, I love it when the people don't just. That's when I can tell that they are a fan of the craft. That they're not just, hey, I'm going to jump up to WWE and make some money and go. Like he's a big ass luchador to be throwing out some of the stuff he did. But my hat's off to him. Big name in the MMA world. And, coming over and showing respect to professional wrestling, donning the luchador mask. And then I would have liked to see more of him at WWE, just like maybe not on that main roster, but maybe develop into something. But you never know.
Bossman, John Scott, thoughts on Cain Velasquez? Maybe across both disciplines.
Yeah, I liked watching him in UFC quite a lot. He's actually one of my favorite fighters to watch. And I think in terms of wrestling, like the stuff JC said about when he was doing the lucha stuff, that was better. He was not Cain Velasquez of MMA. He was doing all sorts of crazy stuff, but WWE just wanted Cain Velasquez from MMA. They didn't want him to do all the high flying stuff and jumping off ropes or anything like that. And that whole Saudi trip was just a disaster for me. You put the other guy next to him as well, Tyson Fury, that was on the same card. It was a very odd occasion for both of them. I think they both looked pretty odd out of their comfort zones, considering how good Tyson Fury is on a mic. He looked very awkward that night. But Velasquez, I mean, it's a shame if that is the last we've seen of him, but there's been absolutely no talk at all about Velasquez. And yet he was training hard down at the Performance Center for a long old time because there was always pictures of him turning up every morning. So he obviously took it very serious.
I think, going back to what Chris said, it was the injuries that scuppered him in UFC. He would have been champion for a lot longer. We've spoken about it previously, me and Chris, like the hot potato with a heavyweight title. But I think if he'd have been fully fit, Chris, Pete Kane, he would have gone on a run like Miocic has done, where he's defeated people. Absolutely. But I think in terms of WWE, that short period, why didn't they turn him heel against Rey Mysterio? That's what I was waiting for. And then he worked the program with Mysterio. Mysterio would have made him look $1 million. That would have made sense to me going forward. That's what I was waiting for, but it was over. It was over before it begun, lads. What are your thoughts?
Why did they have to put him with Brock Lesnar? I know they had their obviously match in UFC and was a one-sided affair, wasn't it? Because Kane was on the up at that point, and Brock was obviously, as you said, he had diverticulitis and was fighting a lot of demons at that point, wasn't he? When he run into Kane, and Kane was just a monster. Why did they have to put that up? Them together, couldn't he not have maybe gone to NXT and gone up that way, and people obviously would have got used to who he was?
I think because of what he'd done in UFC, because he was so well known, he didn't start off there. They just put him on the main roster because he was, he polarized the sport, didn't he, of MMA, I suppose. So they were like, right, you've got to go on the main roster. Other than AJ and Ronda, who everyone else has had to pass through NXT developmental. I can't think of anybody else. I think that's it, isn't it? So, JC?
Well, my thoughts would have been, if I can go 2020 and be an armchair booker, is bring him in NXT under the Lucha mask, maybe have him with the Lucha Dragons, as all of a sudden they got this big beast that's kind of watching their back. And now he's throwing out some amazing, as he learns and develops, he's throwing out some amazing Lucha moves for a big dude. When he moves up to the main roster or before he moves up, they unmask him and holy shit, it's been Cain Velasquez this whole time. Then cool. I think that you would have had something kind of cool there. But he would have had all that time to develop. Obviously, we need to put some type of top on him or something. I don't want to make him into Nacho Libre, but or even leave the tattoos open and just have people speculating, and then make them go, yeah, I know that's Cain, but then he's doing so much shit that you're finally going, wait, that might not be Cain Velasquez. He's pulling out some pretty good moves, and then have the unveiling, tear the mask off, and he just has goes on a little bit of a tear. I think that would have been fun.
I would have liked that.
The Booker man, Justin Clapper, you see.
Yeah.
He had his Booker head on then. No, it's got validity, absolutely. Right, gentlemen, I think that is us all done. We've managed to cover pretty much what I thought we were going to cover. And JC, Justin Clapper, can you tell us what's going on with Wrestling Travel, where we can find you? Any interviews that are coming up as well, mate? I'd like to know. I know you've
just dropped. I don't know when this is going to air, but we just dropped WWE Hall of Fame inductee 2021. My sit down with Mr. Rob Van Dam. So that is out there right now. Go to our YouTube, go to our Twitter. Everything's at Wrestling Travel. Please check out that interview. I had no idea. We knew something was kind of going on, but thanks to my good friends at Wrestle Merch, we got that interview done. Check out Rob Van Dam. I've got, speaking of the rowdy one, I will have his daughter, Teal Piper, on very shortly, upcoming. Mr. Doug Williams. And Stu, you and I have talked off camera. Mr. Brian Clark is coming up. Adam Baum, or as many people know him better off as the Night Stalker in the AWA with manager Box Baker. I think that was the gig that would have got him a lot more recognition than what he's done now. But no, please check us out. Wrestling Travel. We're going to Wrestle Kingdom. We're going to Dallas. We're going to LA. Please check us out. Give us a thumbs up on the YouTube.
Are all the WrestleMania packages sold yet, or can people still book on as well just before?
They can still book on, but I got to tell you, to be honest with you, and I don't want to we're still in a pandemic, and the light is at the end of the tunnel, I think, for everybody, because they have been selling, maybe not like hotcakes, but like pancakes or something, that they've been going a lot faster than they have. You've got our protection on there. Obviously, there's a force majeure in there now that the world has realized that stuff can happen. But Wrestle Kingdom coming up in January. Dallas will be Dallas of 2022. I got some awesome things going on in Dallas. And then obviously Los Angeles in 2023. But please check us out. You can email me, Twitter me, call me, whatever. I'll help you through the packages. Help you know what's right. We like I said, we've learned from the rain in New York. We're getting a bus in Dallas, so we're always learning. We're always getting better. You know what I mean? We want to be the best, but we will never rest on the laurels. We will always continue to improve.
Absolutely, it's well worth booking on, guys. Absolutely, boss man, John Scott, Mr. Powered 4. What's happening with you as well? Like to find out that before we go.
We've got a new sponsor, WrestleMania. They're with us. That I've had here the whole show. Only kidding. I want an extra plug for Mr. Justin there for Wrestling Travel, and that is use the code TRAVEL when you sign up to powered4.tv for 50% off your first month. Use the code TRAVEL. Very, very easy. 25 promotions and counting. We're going to have a few more in the next upcoming weeks. So really looking forward to that. And of course, hope everybody enjoys this WrestleMania weekend, because this is when it's going to go out, obviously, and everybody's having a good time. I can't say that I'm overly excited for WrestleMania card, but whenever WrestleMania comes around, there's always some sort of nostalgia that pulls me back. So I just hope everybody enjoys it. And don't forget, Powered 4 Showcase is going to be taking place, which will be tomorrow on the Saturday. And we're going to be from 2 o'clock to 8 o'clock, dropping a match every hour. There's the pet that's happy there up the top. That one's happy about WrestleMania. But yeah, on the hour, be dropping a free match. So stay tuned for that. And thank you very much for having us on, guys.
I've loved it. I've loved having you two on. Right, my co-host for Big Fight Weekly, Chris Hume. Just let the viewers know who we've got coming on the show. It'll be the week of this.
Coming on from next week, you mean? Yeah.
Yes. That's yeah.
We have Ultimate Fighter Millennium Dave Faulkner coming on the show with us to speak about all things tough, his wrestling career as well, and obviously help us break down the Aaron Till versus Vittori for Fight Night on the weekend.
Dave is also one half of the Dogs of War with the babyface Pitbull. He's gone into wrestling, but I can't wait to get Mr. Faulkner on for the show. It's going to be good because he was he was funny on the Ultimate Fighter all those years ago.
He was absolutely brilliant.
He was worth his weight in gold. He had the lucha mask in the house, didn't he?
Yeah, he was fighting with Dean Amasinger in the front room, while everyone else, like the Americans, were like bewildered by it. Like, why are they having so much fun? Yeah, it was absolutely brilliant.
Thank you all the way from Wisconsin, Wrestling Travel Zone, Justin Clapper, one of the head honchos for Powered 4, Mr. John Scott. Thank you for all the support, mate, from you and Rich. Yeah, there we go. He's pointing. And my co-host for Powered 4 Big Fight Weekly, every Tuesday, 6 p.m. live, Mr. Chris Hume. And this has been the WrestleMania special. Thank you for watching.
Please check out Wrestling Travel. They're a great sponsor for us. They help us with so many different events, so many different traveling inquiries. They are the greatest. They have been seen at Starrcade, Warrior Wrestling, you name it. Wrestling Travel is one of